Christmas night in Italy. The kind of night you only see in movies. Snow falling softly over the cobblestone streets. Lights twinkle like tiny stars across the rooftops. Inside the DeLuca mansion, everything is alive with warmth and celebration. Crystal chandeliers hang from the ceiling, casting sharp, sparkling light across polished marble floors. Laughter echoes off the walls. Champagne glasses clink. Music plays softly in the background. But if you look closely, this isn't just a Christmas party. Not tonight. Tonight, every smile, every polite bow, every glass raised carries a weight of fear. Alessandro De Luca, the most feared Mafia king in all of Italy, stands at the center of it all. Early 30s. Tall, sharp-featured. Dark hair slicked back perfectly. Eyes colder than winter. Steel. A man who can make the world stop with a single word. He isn't here to celebrate. He's here to remind everyone why he's the king. Why the underworld bows to him. Tonight he whispers a rule to his inner circle. Not loud, not for anyone else to hear. Just close enough for the chosen few. Tonight, no woman leaves this house without my permission, he says. A soft whisper, but it carries a threat as heavy as iron. Anyone who disobeys, anyone who thinks they can ignore it, they will ignite a war they aren't prepared for. No one laughs. No one dares question him. The party continues around them, but for those who know, something has changed. The air itself feels thicker, heavier, charged with tension. Even the laughter sounds hollow. And then she walks in. Elena Romano, 23, innocent, beautiful, but unaware of the danger that surrounds her. She's here because of her cousin. She didn't know the De Luca family personally. She didn't know that tonight, the smallest misstep could cost her life. Yet, somehow. Alessandro notices her immediately. His eyes, sharp and calculating, follow her as she moves through the room. There's something about her that unnerves him. Something different. Meanwhile, Elena feels it too. The odd looks. The subtle shifts in conversations when she passes. The way the guards casually close doors just a little tighter. A chill runs down her spine. And not just from the winter snow outside. Something feels wrong. And just like that, the whisper has set the stage. The stakes are clear. One simple rule. One woman, one king. And beneath the glittering lights, the first domino of disaster waits to fall. Because Christmas night, as beautiful as it is, will not remain innocent for long. In the shadows of this grand estate, danger is already stirring. And Alessandro De Luca? He's about to find out that this night will test more than just loyalty or power. It will test everything, including his own heart. The camera of your imagination pans across the room. Guests smile, the orchestra plays, and, somewhere, Elena unknowingly takes a step that could change everything. The clock is ticking. The snow keeps falling. And in the quietest corner, the king whispers again. Not to anyone else, but perhaps to fate itself. Break this rule, and Italy burns. The party goes on. On the surface, it looks perfect. Laughter, music, champagne. Every detail carefully arranged. Crystal glasses, polished silver, candles burning like tiny beacons of warmth. Guests chatter in soft Italian, their voices polite but tense. Every step, every movement has a meaning. This isn't just a celebration. It's a chessboard. And Alessandro De Luca knows exactly where every piece stands. Elena walks slowly through the grand hall. Her dress is simple, elegant. Not flashy like the others. She moves carefully, trying to appear confident, but the subtle nervousness is obvious to anyone paying attention. Her eyes drift over the glittering decorations, the towering Christmas tree, the shimmering ornaments reflecting the candlelight. For a moment, it feels magical. She forgets, just for a heartbeat, that she's in the middle of the most dangerous gathering in all of Italy. And then, like a shadow, he notices her. Alessandro watches quietly from across the room. Not a single muscle moves in his face, but his eyes are fixed. There's something about Elena that stands out. Something dangerous in her innocence. Something intriguing. And just like that, the perfect party begins to feel less perfect. The guests continue their conversations, unaware of the tension simmering beneath the surface. Alliances are whispered in the corners. Deals are silently made and broken. Everyone is waiting for a sign, waiting for something to happen that will shift the balance of power. But the sign is already here. Elena doesn't know it yet. She is the spark that could ignite everything. The music swells, a gentle symphony that tries to mask the undercurrent of fear. Guests raise their glasses in toasts. Smiles are painted on faces that would betray them in an instant if the wrong word were spoken. Every laugh, every cheer is a mask. And behind those masks, everyone is watching, waiting, calculating. Elena's attention drifts to a group of young men laughing near the bar. They seem harmless, but Alessandro notices. Every detail matters to him. The tilt of her head, the way she glances at the guards, the little nervous movements she doesn't even realize she's making. He already knows the danger she brings. He doesn't act yet. Not now. Patience is his ally, and patience has kept him alive, unchallenged, feared. The chandeliers cast long shadows across the room. Light dances on the marble floors like fire, and yet even in this beauty, there is an edge. A whisper of threat in the air that only some can sense. Elena doesn't hear it. She doesn't know the game being played around her. But her presence has already changed it. DeLuca walks slowly through the party, each step deliberate, commanding. Guests instinctively give him space, parting like the sea before a storm. And then, his gaze finds Elena again. For a moment, it feels like the rest of the world disappears. The music, the laughter, the glittering lights, all of it fades. It's just him and her. And in that silence, the first seeds of chaos take root. Somewhere in the mansion, a guard quietly whispers a warning to another. Something about exits, something about rules, something about a woman who doesn't belong. The tension is invisible to the rest, but it's thick enough to choke. Everyone feels it, even if they can't name it. And as Elena sips her drink, smiling politely at people she barely knows, the camera pans out. The perfect Christmas party, glittering, beautiful, flawless, is now the stage. The game is set. And Alessandro DeLuca, calm and deadly, whispers to himself just enough for no one to hear. Everything changes tonight. One misstep, one move, and this party becomes a battlefield. Elena had never been to a place like this before. The grandeur of the DeLuca mansion was overwhelming. Marble floors that gleamed under hundreds of lights, chandeliers dripping with crystals, velvet curtains that seemed to swallow the walls whole. Music floated through the air, a soft symphony of violins and pianos, but it couldn't mask the tension that lurked beneath the laughter. She clutched her small clutch nervously, trying to keep herself composed. Everyone around her seemed to know the rules, how to smile, where to stand, who to avoid. Elena didn't know the rules. She didn't know the undercurrents, the secrets whispered in corners, the dangerous glances that could end someone's life. All she knew was that she had been invited by her cousin and she wanted to make a good impression. But the moment she stepped fully into the grand hall, she realized something was off. The air didn't feel festive. It was heavy, watching, waiting. Even the guests who laughed and toasted their drinks had eyes that flicked toward her just a little too long, as if assessing her, judging her, counting her as either threat or opportunity. And then she saw him. Alessandro DeLuca, the king of this world, the man whose name alone made powerful men bend and tremble. He stood near the fireplace, calm, composed, every inch the predator, disguised as a host. His dark eyes scanned the room, but the moment they landed on Elena, they lingered. Not threatening, not cold, observing, measuring, calculating. Something about her drew his attention like a magnet, though she had no idea why. Elena tried to blend in, moving along the edges of the room, greeting a few distant relatives and acquaintances, but it was useless. DeLuca's gaze followed her, even as she laughed politely at a joke she didn't understand. Something about her presence disrupted the balance of the party. Something about her innocence, her unfamiliarity with this dangerous world, made her stand out. She felt the subtle glances of the guards. Their eyes, trained and unyielding, followed her movements. The doors had been subtly locked, though she hadn't noticed yet. A small unease prickled her spine. Something wasn't right. She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just nerves, just her imagination. But the feeling refused to leave. As she approached the bar to get a drink, a group of men laughed loudly nearby, trying too hard to appear relaxed. Their eyes flicked toward her as she passed. One of them nudged the other, a subtle warning that only they would understand. Elena had stepped into a world she couldn't see yet, a world where one wrong move could ignite a war. And then, a soft murmur from behind, a whisper too quiet for anyone but the nearest ear. She doesn't belong. Elena didn't hear it, but DeLuca did. He leaned slightly closer to the man. Beside him, his lips barely moving, yet every word sharp as a knife. Watch her. She is trouble, and she doesn't know it yet. Elena continued through the hall, completely unaware that she was now the focal point of every calculation, every strategy, every silent battle. She was the outsider, the girl who didn't belong. And in the shadows, the king's mind raced. How far would she go before the rules caught her? How much danger would follow her steps? The music played on, soft and almost innocent, but underneath, tension coiled like a snake, ready to strike. The perfect party, with all its beauty and elegance, had its first crack. And the girl at the center of it had no idea she had already stepped onto the path that could change everything. Because in Alessandro DeLuca's world, being noticed wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. And tonight, Elena had just received hers. Elena thought she had a handle on things. She moved through the grand hall, smiling politely, laughing softly, trying to blend in. But the feeling in the pit of her stomach was growing heavier. With every step, something wasn't right. The warmth of the chandeliers, the sparkle of the Christmas lights, the soft music. It all felt like a mask. A mask hiding something sharp, dangerous, waiting to strike. She noticed it first in the guards. At first, she thought she was imagining things. But then she saw how they subtly shifted when she passed, how their eyes flicked toward the exits, and then back to her. Their movements were quiet, almost casual, but every detail screamed alertness. Something was being watched, and she was the focus. Even the guests acted differently. Conversations paused the moment she walked by. A smile froze on a face only to return moments later. Laughter seemed forced. Elena tried to brush it off. She told herself she was imagining it. Maybe the grandeur, the intimidation, the unfamiliarity. Maybe it was all just nerves. But the unease only grew. She reached for her drink at the bar, and for the first time, she noticed the subtle locks on the doors. Not loud, not obvious, just a faint click when someone passed by. The exits weren't completely blocked, not yet, but they weren't entirely free either, and something told her it wasn't a coincidence. Her heart beat faster. She wasn't sure if it was fear or instinct, but something inside her screamed. This party wasn't ordinary. This wasn't just a celebration. She was no longer a guest. She was part of something bigger. Something she couldn't yet understand. From across the room, Alessandro DeLuca watched her quietly. He had known from the start that she didn't belong. That much was obvious. But even he hadn't expected how her presence would immediately disrupt the atmosphere of the entire mansion. Every ally, every rival, every loyal guard. Everything shifted the moment she arrived. And she didn't even realize it. DeLuca moved closer to the center of the hall, his steps deliberate, measured, commanding. The party seemed to bend around him, like gravity itself was drawn toward the king. Elena felt it too, without knowing why. There was a tension in the air now, almost visible, like electricity coursing through the room. Then a subtle warning reached her senses, a whisper she didn't fully hear, but one she somehow felt. A glance from a guard, a stiffening of shoulders, a quick exchange of words no one else would notice. Something was brewing, something that could explode in the blink of an eye. Elena paused, gripping her clutch tighter. She tried to steady herself, reminding herself this was a Christmas party. Nothing could go wrong on a night like this, but instinct told her otherwise. Every small signal, the way people shifted, the way conversations faltered, the way the king's gaze followed her, was a warning she couldn't ignore. The music continued, soft, sweet, almost innocent. But beneath it, a tension coiled like a snake, ready to strike. The beauty, the laughter, the glittering lights, it all felt like a fragile shell, about to shatter. And Elena, in all her innocence, had no idea she was standing right at the center of it. Because in Alessandro De Luca's world, nothing was accidental. Nothing went unnoticed. And tonight, the girl who didn't belong was about to prove just how dangerous one misstep could be. Elena felt trapped. The beauty of the De Luca mansion now seemed suffocating. The chandeliers still sparkled, the music still played, the laughter still echoed. But to her, it all felt like a cage. Every glance, every whisper, every subtle shift in the room reminded her that she didn't belong here. She wasn't part of this world. And deep down, a small, nagging fear told her she was in danger. Then her phone buzzed. A call from her mother, urgent, something about an emergency. Her heart skipped a beat. She told herself she just needed to step out for a moment, to check, to make sure everything was okay. Nothing more, just a quick step outside. But as she looked around, the subtle tension in the room became clearer. Guards shifted. Whispers stopped mid-sentence. Eyes flicked toward her. And then she remembered the king's whispered rule. She hadn't heard it directly. No one had told her. But instinct told her something important had just changed. Something she didn't fully understand. Elena's decision was simple. She needed to leave. Fast. Without drawing attention. She moved toward a side exit she had noticed earlier. It was quiet, secluded, almost hidden. She thought she was being careful. Thought she was making a smart choice. But the mansion had eyes. The moment she stepped through the door, just a few feet away from the main hall, the subtle machinery of the De Luca world clicked into motion. A guard who had been pretending to adjust a light fixture froze. Another whispered something under his breath. And far across the hall, Alessandro's eyes narrowed, not in anger, not in curiosity, but in recognition. She had broken the rule. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. No one shouted, no one ran. But in that silent, fleeting moment, the entire balance of power shifted. One woman, one innocent misstep, had set into motion a chain of events that could not be stopped. Elena didn't realize what she had done. All she knew was that she needed to check on her mother. She didn't see the tension spike, the way every subtle movement in the room froze. She didn't hear the faint clink of a glass dropped in sudden realization. She didn't notice the way guards subtly blocked secondary exits, subtly steering her path. And then, as she pressed her hand against the door handle, she felt it, an instinctive pause. The hair on the back of her neck stood on end. A chill ran down her spine, stronger than the winter air outside. Something was wrong. She didn't know what, she didn't know why, but something told her she had stepped into danger. Across the room, Alessandro took a single step forward. The soft murmur of guests seemed to fade into the background. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes followed her. Every instinct, every calculation, every part of him screamed that she was the spark that could ignite a war on Christmas night. And then it happened. A subtle sound, a shift in the guard's stance, a quiet warning whispered, just loud enough for the nearest ears. Elena paused. For a heartbeat, she froze, realizing that something about her escape had been noticed. But it was too late. The mistake was already made. One woman had unknowingly defied a king. One misstep had started the clock ticking. The mansion's beauty, the holiday cheer, the soft music, it all seemed irrelevant now. Danger had arrived quietly, invisibly, and Elena was standing right at its center. And Alessandro De Luca, the man who controlled fear and loyalty and death itself, now had to decide. Would he punish her? Would he protect her? Or would the whispered rule that had gone, unbroken for years, finally claim a life tonight? The night, beautiful and deadly, had just begun, and the first mistake had been made. The music stopped. Not abruptly, not with a bang. It just faded. The soft laughter, the tinkling of glasses, the gentle hum of conversation, it all slipped away, leaving a hollow, unsettling quiet. For a moment, it felt like the mansion itself was holding its breath. The kind of silence that screams louder than 1,000 shouts. Elena paused in the hallway, just outside the grand hall, her hand still on the door. She couldn't hear anyone. She couldn't see anyone. All she could feel was the heaviness in the air, pressing down on her like a physical weight. It was the first time she realized she had crossed a line. She had made a mistake, and in the world she didn't understand, mistakes came with consequences. Inside, Alessandro De Luca stood perfectly still. His eyes were sharp, piercing, scanning the room. The whisper had reached him. He didn't need anyone to tell him. He didn't need confirmation. His instincts screamed louder than the quiet that now filled the hall. Someone had broken the rule. One woman, one misstep. That was all it took. The guests continued their polite smiles, their soft murmurs, but something had shifted. The subtle energy that had been brewing, the tension in the air, the invisible pulse of danger, had grown into a living thing. Everyone could feel it, even if they didn't know why. Eyes flicked toward the exits. A laugh froze mid-sentence. Hands paused over glasses. The air itself seemed electric. Elena, unaware of the full weight of her actions, stepped forward. Her pulse raced. She could feel something behind her, but she couldn't see it. It was as if the walls themselves were watching. Her instinct told her to run, but there was no clear path. Every exit felt like it might lead her into danger. Every shadow seemed to hide 1,000 threats. And then, in the silence, came a faint murmur. Just a whisper. A single, almost imperceptible, warning. Not for Elena. She didn't hear it. But Alessandro did. He knew immediately. The clock had started. The first ripple of chaos. And in that instant, he understood the full gravity of the situation. One mistake could turn the entire night into bloodshed. Across the hall, the chandeliers glimmered coldly, casting long, twisting shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Guards shifted subtly, hands brushing the hilts of weapons tucked under jackets. Eyes met in brief, silent exchanges. The rule had been broken, and now everyone waited to see what would happen next. Elena pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat thunder in her ears. She didn't know what had triggered it, but a wave of fear washed over her. It was different from anything she had ever felt. Not like simple worry, not like nerves. This was danger. Pure, invisible, immediate, and she was standing right in its path. Alessandro moved closer to the grand hall, his gaze never leaving her. Calm, precise, deadly. He had faced assassins, rivals, betrayals, wars. But this was different. The rules he had followed all his life were now at risk, and the woman who had unknowingly broken them had captured his full attention. And then, just as suddenly as the silence fell, the soft flicker of movement returned. The music restarted, soft and low, but it couldn't mask the tension. It was still there, pulsing in the air. Elena moved again, carefully, every step measured, but nothing would be the same. One wrong move had changed the night forever. The mansion, beautiful and grand, seemed to whisper its own warning. In Alessandro De Luca's world, Silence was never empty, and tonight, that silence had spoken. The quiet didn't last long. Not in Alessandro De Luca's world. The soft hum of music, the polite clinking of glasses, everything shattered the moment the first gunshot echoed outside the mansion. It was distant at first, almost like a warning, but then more followed. Rapid, sharp, unmistakable, the kind of sound that makes your blood freeze in your veins. Elena froze in the hallway, clutching her clutch tightly. Her eyes darted toward the grand hall, toward the doors she had just walked past. Panic rose in her chest like fire. She had no idea what was happening, only that the world had suddenly shifted from elegance to chaos. The music didn't stop this time. It was drowned out by the unmistakable reality of danger. Someone was coming. Someone wanted her dead, or worse. Alessandro didn't move like the others. He didn't panic. Calm, precise, lethal. That was his way. He had faced countless threats, survived countless attempts on his life, but even he could feel the tension spike now. The whispers, the subtle shifts, the broken rule, all of it had led to this. The war had begun, and the mansion, his kingdom, was ground zero. Guards moved like shadows. Hands brushed against weapons, eyes scanned every corridor, every window, every shadow. Alessandro's gaze locked on Elena, who didn't yet understand the danger that had found her. She was out of place, unarmed, unaware, yet she had just become the epicenter of a war that could consume everything. The shots grew closer. A car screeched outside. Someone yelled orders in a language Elena didn't fully understand. Bullets tore through the night, slicing through the air, ricocheting off metal and marble. Guests screamed, some ducked behind pillars, others froze in horror. The perfect Christmas party had erupted into a battlefield in less than a heartbeat. Elena's mind raced. She didn't know where to run, who to trust. Every exit seemed dangerous, every shadow seemed alive. She realized then that leaving the party, breaking the rule, had been a mistake beyond imagination. One small action, one innocent step outside, had triggered a war she had no idea she was part of. Alessandro moved with purpose. His steps were silent but commanding. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. The guards knew exactly what to do, following his every gesture without question. And then, in the chaos, he reached Elena. One hand grabbed hers, pulling her behind a massive pillar. His eyes were cold, calculating, but there was something else. Something no one else could see. Protectiveness. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low, calm, deadly. "Stay close. Don't move." Elena could barely respond. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. The war, outside, was no longer distant. It was at the doors. Every window reflected flashes of light. Every shadow hid a potential assassin. The mansion's grandeur was useless now. Beauty meant nothing. Safety meant nothing, and then a second wave hit. A black SUV screeched to a stop at the gates. Men in masks, armed to the teeth, emerged. They weren't here for a party. They were here for blood. And Elena realized too late that she had unknowingly drawn a target on herself. Alessandro's hand tightened around hers. His calm was unnerving, almost supernatural. "I will not let anything happen to you," he said, his eyes sweeping the hall. "But if you move a single step without me, you die." Elena swallowed hard. She understood the truth now. The whispered rule wasn't just tradition. It wasn't just power. Breaking it had consequences, life and death consequences, and she had just broken it. Outside, the war raged. Inside, the king of Italy's underworld had claimed his first move. And in that instant, Elena realized that Christmas night would never be the same. Nothing would ever be the same. The music was gone. The laughter was gone. Only the sound of gunfire, shouting, and fear remained. The war had begun. Elena ran. Not thinking. Not planning. Just running. Through halls that suddenly seemed like a maze, past shattered ornaments and overturned chairs, her heels clicking against the marble floors. The sound of gunfire echoed behind her, close now, merciless, relentless. She didn't know where to go. She didn't know who was chasing her. All she knew was that one misstep, one innocent mistake, had turned Christmas night into a nightmare. The mansion was no longer a home. It was a trap. Every doorway, every hallway, every shadow could hide death. She pressed herself against a wall, trying to catch her breath, feeling panic curl around her chest. Her mind raced. She didn't belong here. She didn't know these rules. And now she was running for her life. And then she felt him. A presence she couldn't miss. A shadow moving faster than anyone else. Alessandro De Luca. Calm, controlled, deadly. He wasn't just following her. He was protecting her. One hand reached for hers, gripping tightly, pulling her away from danger before she even realized it. "You need to stay close," he said, his voice low, steady, commanding. "Don't look back. Don't think. Just move." Elena wanted to argue, to protest, to run faster, but the fear in her chest was too strong. She obeyed. She didn't fully trust him, but instinct told her she had no choice. He was her only protection. And in a world like his, protection came at a price. Outside, the chaos grew. Shots rang out from every angle. The garden, once beautiful and serene, was now a battlefield. Snow melted under the weight of boots and tires. The night air was thick with smoke, sparks, and fear. Masked figures emerged from dark corners, weapons raised, hunting, and the realization hit Elena with crushing force. She wasn't just a witness to this war. She was the target. Alessandro moved with purpose, his eyes scanning every movement, every threat, every shadow. He didn't speak unnecessarily. Words were a luxury in a night like this. His focus was absolute. Every step precise. Every decision calculated. And yet beneath the deadly precision there was something else. Concern. Protectiveness. Something he hadn't felt in years. Something that made him both dangerous and unpredictable. They ducked behind pillars, slipped through corridors, narrowly avoiding men who would have killed them without a second thought. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. Every corner felt like the last she would turn. Every sound could be her death. And yet somehow she kept moving, pulled along by Alessandro's grip, following his silent commands. She didn't understand the rules, but she understood instinct. And Alessandro's instinct told her one thing: survival. If she stayed with him, she had a chance. Alone, she was dead. A window shattered nearby, and the cold wind cut across her face. Snow blew in, catching in her hair. She blinked, trying to see through the chaos. And in that moment, she realized the truth. The king of Italy's underworld was not just her protector. He was her only hope. "Trust me," Alessandro whispered. "One step out of line, and it's over." Elena swallowed hard, her fear mixing with something else. Confusion, curiosity, a strange sense of connection she didn't understand. In the middle of bullets, chaos, and betrayal, she felt him. Steady, controlling, deadly. He was both the danger and the safety. They kept moving. The hunt continued. The mansion, the garden, the night itself, it had all transformed into a predator's playground. And Elena was running at its center, unaware that every step, every heartbeat, brought her closer to a truth she was not yet ready to face. In Alessandro De Luca's world, trust was as dangerous as the gunfire, and loyalty could cost more than life itself. The night was alive, the hunt had begun, and Christmas, once beautiful, would now be remembered for blood, fear, and a chase that had no end in sight. The mansion was a battlefield now. Gunfire echoed through the halls, screams ricocheted off the marble, and the scent of gunpowder and fear filled the air. Guests had either fled, hidden, or fallen. But Alessandro De Luca moved through it all like a shadow, calm, lethal, and completely in control. His eyes scanned every corner, every hallway, every threat. And his focus was Singular. Elena. She stumbled slightly behind him, exhausted, terrified, and completely out of her depth. She didn't belong here. She had never faced this kind of danger, and yet somehow she was caught. In the eye of a storm that had been building long before she arrived. She wanted to scream, to run, to tell him she didn't understand, that she wanted nothing to do with this. But her voice was gone, lost in the chaos. Alessandro stopped in a small, shadowed corridor, pressed her against the wall, and looked into her eyes. There was no anger, no coldness, no threat in his gaze, yet the weight of his presence was suffocating. Every instinct told her this man could end her life in a heartbeat, but the tension in the air also said something else. He was not going to let that happen. Not yet. "You don't understand," he said, low and deliberate, his voice cutting through the chaos. "If you had stayed in the hall, if you had ignored the rule, you'd be dead already, and everyone you care about, gone." Elena's mind raced. She still didn't fully understand what rule he was talking about. One misstep, one innocent decision, had somehow sparked a war. And now, standing here with the most dangerous man in Italy's underworld, she realized the reality of her mistake. She wasn't just a guest. She was the cause of chaos. Alessandro's eyes hardened. "You broke the rule," he said. "Do you understand what that means?" I didn't know," she stammered. He shook his head, the faintest edge of frustration in his expression. "Ignorance doesn't matter. Only consequences do. Tonight, you've put everything, me, my people, my city, at risk, and now I have to make a choice." The weight of his words hung in the air. Elena could barely breathe. She wanted to beg, to apologize, to somehow convince him that she meant no harm, that she was just herself. But she didn't know how. Alessandro's hand brushed against her arm, firm but not gentle. A reminder that while he had the power to destroy, he also had the power to protect. "I can't let this go," he said, "not without consequences. But I also can't let you die." Elena looked up at him, confusion and fear warring in her expression. "Then what will happen to me?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the halls again, noting the position of every threat, every sniper, every masked figure waiting to take advantage of her mistake. The war had started, and yet, in this moment, the entire battlefield seemed to revolve around their small corner. Finally, he whispered, almost to himself, "If I punish you, I lose control. If I protect you, I break every rule I've ever lived by. And yet, I can't let anything happen to you." Elena felt a strange surge of something she didn't understand. Gratitude, fear, confusion, something deeper. An unspoken bond forming in the middle of chaos. She realized for the first time that in Alessandro's world, survival wasn't just about strength. It was about choice, and he had chosen her. The distant sound of gunfire, the chaos of the party, the screams of the innocent, they all faded slightly, eclipsed by the gravity of the moment. The king had made his choice, and that choice would change everything. "You stay close," he said, his voice firm, unwavering. "Do exactly as I say. One wrong move, and it's over. But for now, you live. That is my decision." Elena swallowed hard. She didn't fully understand the world she had stepped into. She didn't fully understand the man beside her. But she understood one thing. Tonight, she was alive because Alessandro De Luca had chosen to protect her. And in a world ruled by fear, power, and death, that was more dangerous than anything else. Elena thought she had escaped the immediate danger, but the night had other plans. As she followed Alessandro through the shattered halls and smoky corridors of the De Luca mansion, a truth began to unravel. One she could not ignore, one that would change everything. "Tell me who you really are," Alessandro said quietly, his voice low, steady, almost like a razor, cutting through the tension around them. His eyes never left hers. In the middle of chaos, in the middle of war, there was a moment, a stillness, and it carried more weight than anything else she had ever felt. Elena shook her head. I'm just Elena. I don't belong here. I don't know your world. I didn't even know about the rules. Her voice trailed off. She wanted to convince him she was innocent, harmless, someone who didn't deserve this nightmare. But the weight in his eyes told her that innocence was irrelevant now. Alessandro paused, looking over his shoulder. Snipers on the rooftops, rival men in black, suits, everywhere was danger. Yet in that brief silence, he saw something else in her, something he hadn't expected, something familiar, something connected. Elena Romano, he said slowly, almost whispering the name, tasting it on his tongue. Romano. His mind raced. He remembered old alliances, old enemies, family names that carried blood and power. And then it clicked. The bloodline. Her family. But the connection that was impossible yet undeniable. Elena's eyes widened. You know my family? She asked, voice trembling. I know everything about them, he said. And you are tied to them. More than you. Realize, more than you should be. His gaze bore into hers, intense, calculating. Do you understand what this means? That one misstep tonight didn't just break a rule. It could start or that your family started generations ago. Elena felt her knees weaken. The warmth she had felt in this strange, dangerous world was replaced by cold reality. She had unknowingly walked into a battlefield, carrying the weight of her bloodline, her family, her mistakes. Every step, every breath, every glance, she was now central to a conflict she had never wanted. Alessandro moved closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. His voice softened, almost imperceptibly. I can protect you, but I cannot shield you from truth, from consequences, from the reality that your presence here, it changes everything. Her mind raced. She had been afraid before, terrified even, but this revelation was something else entirely. The stakes were higher than she imagined. Not just her life, but the lives of everyone she loved, or thought she loved, were now entwined with a man she barely knew and a king who ruled through fear. You should never have come here, Alessandro whispered, almost to himself. His hand tightened slightly, not in anger, but in a protective instinct that he barely acknowledged. But now that you are here, I have to make a choice. Protect you, or let the rules take their course. And tonight, the rules are absolute. Elena swallowed hard, her fear mixed with confusion, awe, and a strange spark she couldn't name. She realized that survival wasn't just about running, hiding, or obeying. Survival was about understanding the forces that surrounded her, and the man who had chosen to stand beside her in the eye of the storm. Alessandro's eyes flicked to the windows, where shadows moved, where danger waited, where rival families had already begun their assault. And yet, despite it all, he didn't waver. His gaze returned to Elena, sharp, calculating, protective. You are part of this now, he said, whether you want to be or not. And I will not let anything happen to you. Not tonight, not ever. Elena nodded, trembling. She didn't fully understand yet. She didn't understand the bloodlines, the history, or the dangerous power that had surrounded her all along. But one thing was clear. The shocking truth had revealed more than just danger. It had revealed a reason, a connection, and the beginning of a bond that would change both their lives forever. The night was no longer just war. It was personal. And in Alessandro De Luca's world, personal meant deadly. The world had changed. Christmas night, once filled with laughter and lights, was now a battlefield. Outside, gunfire shattered the silence. Inside, the De Luca mansion was a labyrinth of chaos. Overturned chairs, shattered glass, the faint smell of smoke in the air. Every step could be death. Every shadow could hide an enemy. And yet, amidst it all, Elena and Alessandro moved together, side by side, heartbeats racing, breathing shallow, alive in a way she had never felt before. Fear and adrenaline surged through them like electricity, sharp and undeniable, and somewhere beneath it all something else began to stir. Something Elena hadn't expected. She glanced at him, catching him moving ahead with absolute precision, his eyes scanning every corner, every threat. He was calm, commanding, lethal. But there was a protectiveness in his movements, a focus on her that seemed to place her above everything else. And in that moment, she felt it. He was not just her savior. He was her anchor. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't leave my side, not for a second." She nodded, trying to keep up as they moved through the smoke-filled hallways, past men who would kill without thought, past obstacles that seemed impossible. Her fear was fierce, but it was also tempered by trust. Trust she had no right to feel, but couldn't deny. In the middle of danger, something fragile and unexpected had begun to grow. Alessandro's hand brushed hers as he guided her through a shattered doorway. For a moment, time slowed. The roar of gunfire faded into a distant hum. The mansion, the chaos, the threat, all of it seemed to pause for an instant. And in that pause, Elena realized how close they were, how dependent she had become on him. Not just for survival, but for strength, for courage, for hope. "You're amazing," she said, barely above a whisper. Not thinking, just letting the words escape. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes softened for a split second, but the sharpness never left. Them. "Amazing?" he repeated, almost incredulous, a hint of something she couldn't quite place in his tone. "You have no idea what's happening around you, and yet, you survive." Elena swallowed, her heart pounding harder. Survival was no longer just about bullets and rules. Survival was about trust. Survival was about him. And somewhere in that realization, a spark ignited. A dangerous, thrilling, undeniable spark that felt like something more. They moved through the hall, narrowly avoiding a masked intruder, sliding behind a fallen pillar, hearts hammering in unison. Alessandro's protective instincts were precise, calculated, deadly. But there was something in the way he looked at her, something raw, something real. She had broken his rule, disrupted his world, and yet he was risking everything to keep her alive. The danger around them was relentless, yet the closeness, the shared breath, the silent connection, they couldn't ignore it. Every touch, every brush of his hand, every glance carried a tension that neither could fully control. It was unspoken, undeniable, and terrifying. Love in this world of chaos was the most dangerous weapon of all. "You have to trust me," he said, low, steady, his gaze locked on hers. In this world, trust is survival, and tonight it might save both our lives. She nodded again, her fear now mingling with something else, something she had never imagined she would feel amidst war and bullets, something that made her pulse race, something that whispered of connection, of closeness, of a dangerous bond that could change everything. And as they pressed forward, weaving through shadows and fire, Elena realized one terrifying, thrilling truth. In a world ruled by death, fear, and unbreakable rules, love was the one force. Neither of them could resist, and it had begun to take hold. The mansion was a war zone, but Alessandro De Luca's mind was sharper than ever. Every shadow, every sound, every movement of the intruders was calculated in his head. Yet amidst the chaos, he knew something was coming, a decision, a choice, an ultimatum that could decide everything tonight. Elena followed closely, heart racing, breath shallow. She could feel the weight of the night, pressing down on her. Every step was danger. Every glance might reveal a hidden threat. But Alessandro was there, always a step ahead, always watching. always protecting. Yet even he was tense. Even he knew that this night had reached a critical point. A loud crash from the main hall snapped both of them to attention. The intruders were moving, faster now, more desperate. Men with guns, men with knives, men willing to die to make sure. Elena paid the price for the broken rule. Alessandro's jaw tightened. This wasn't just an attack. This was a challenge, a declaration. And one thing was clear. Tonight someone would have to give in. Alessandro turned to Elena, eyes locking on hers. "Listen to me carefully," he said, low and commanding. "Everything depends on what you do now. One wrong step, one hesitation, and it's over. Do you understand?" She nodded, though her hands shook. She didn't fully understand the rules, the history, or the stakes, but instinct told her she needed to trust him. That was all she had. Trust him. Follow. Him survive. He took her hand, gripping it firmly, and led her to a hidden staircase that descended into the depths of the mansion. Shadows swallowed them, but Alessandro's presence was a shield, a wall of control in a world gone mad. "We need to make them choose," he whispered. "Either they leave, or this ends tonight, and I promise you, it will not end peacefully." Elena's mind raced. She didn't want violence. She didn't want war. She didn't want to be the cause of death and chaos. But standing beside Alessandro, feeling his confidence, his control, she realized that survival sometimes required hard choices. That in this world, rules were absolute and ultimatum was the language everyone understood. They reached a small balcony overlooking the main hall. From here they could see everything: the intruders, the chaos, the guests hiding behind pillars, the snow drifting in through broken windows. Alessandro's gaze swept the scene like a predator, sharp, calculating, unstoppable. Then he spoke, each word deliberate, deadly. "They have two choices," he said, his voice echoing slightly. "Leave now and walk away with their lives, or stay and die. This is not a threat. This is fact. I don't make promises lightly. I don't make mistakes. And I will not let this night end differently because of one broken rule." Elena swallowed hard, gripping his arm. She didn't know if she could handle what was about to happen. She didn't know if she could survive it. But she knew one thing: Alessandro would not waver. He was the king, and this was his world. And tonight, she was part of it. Whether she liked it or not, the intruders hesitated below, sensing the resolve in Alessandro's voice, the deadly certainty in his eyes. Some whispered orders to each other. Some took cautious steps back. Fear had entered the room. Not just fear of bullets, not just fear of death, but fear of the king who ruled. With invisible power, Elena realized in that moment that she had survived not just because of luck, but because Alessandro had chosen her. Not just for protection, but as a statement. And as the first intruder slowly raised his hands in surrender, she understood the terrifying, thrilling truth. In Alessandro De Luca's world, ultimatum was absolute, and one choice tonight could change everything forever. The echoes of gunfire had faded for a moment, leaving an eerie stillness in the De Luca mansion. But the tension remained, thick as the smoke curling through the broken windows. Elena's heart pounded in her chest like a drumbeat of fear, yet beneath it, a strange clarity had taken over. She could hear everything: the whispers, the footsteps, the faint breathing of the men outside, even the calculated silence of Alessandro behind her. She knew what was coming. She felt it in every fiber of her being. The war, the chaos, the rules. Tonight, they had all converged on her. And yet the thought of Alessandro in danger, of losing him, was unbearable. Every instinct screamed at her. Do something. Save him. Even if it costs you everything. She stepped closer to him, the faint tremble in her hands betraying her fear. Her eyes met. His. Calm, deadly, but filled with something she had never seen before. Vulnerability, just for a fraction of a second. He had the world at his command, yet tonight, she realized, even a king could not fight alone. "I can do this," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. I'll handle it." Alessandro's eyes narrowed, a flicker of disbelief crossing his sharp features. "Elena, no, you can't." But she cut him off, shaking her head. "I have to. You've protected me all night. You've risked everything for me. Now let me protect you. Even if it's the last thing I do." For a heartbeat, there was silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence before a storm. The pause where decisions were made and fates were sealed. Alessandro hesitated, torn between the instinct to shield her and the understanding that she had made her choice. Her hand reached out slowly, deliberately, and placed the gun in his palm. The cold metal felt heavier than she imagined, and yet it carried the weight of her resolve. She wasn't just offering a weapon. She was offering herself. Every fear, every risk, every heartbeat was now in his hands. Alessandro stared at the gun, then back at her. The chaos outside faded for a moment as he registered the enormity of her decision. This wasn't just about survival. This was trust. Pure, absolute, terrifying trust. And he understood it, fully, in a way that cut deeper than any bullet ever could. Elena stepped back slightly, readying herself. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes were fixed, unwavering. She could hear the men below, snarling, plotting, unaware that the balance had just shifted. She could see the glint of the moonlight on the barrels of their guns. And in that moment, she knew there was no turning back. She had chosen her role. She had chosen sacrifice. Alessandro's hand closed over hers for an instant, holding her steady, transferring a fraction of his control, his power, his presence. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly, almost tenderly, despite the madness around them. "I have to," she replied. "If you live, then everything else can survive too. Let me be the shield tonight. Let me save you." And then, as gunfire erupted once again in the distance, she watched him lift the weapon. His eyes narrowing, the king of Italy's underworld fully aware of the life and death choice before him. Her sacrifice had changed the rules. Her courage had shifted the balance. And in that single, terrifying moment, she realized what it meant to truly stand beside someone in war. Trust, love, and fearless resolve. The night was far from over. But one thing was certain. Elena had made her choice. And in Alessandro De Luca's world, that choice would echo forever. The air in the mansion was thick with tension, heavier than gunpowder, heavier than fear. Elena stood before Alessandro, her chest heaving, every heartbeat echoing like a warning drum. The chaos outside had quieted, just enough to make the next move even more terrifying. And Alessandro's eyes were unreadable, sharp, and full of a calculation she could not fathom. "You have to trust me," he said, voice low, deliberate, and deadly calm. "Every second counts. You need to believe me, even when it looks impossible." Elena nodded, swallowing hard. Her hands still shook from the adrenaline, but she held her ground. She had followed him this far, survived more than she thought possible. And now she faced the ultimate test. Trust. Absolute, terrifying, unbreakable trust. Alessandro lifted the gun, his movements precise, deliberate, slow. Elena's heart clenched in terror. The shadows in the hall seemed to stretch longer, colder, as if the mansion itself was, holding its breath. She looked into his eyes, searching for a flicker of hesitation, a sign, anything, but found nothing. Only the unwavering focus of a man about to take a step that would change everything. "This is the only way," he whispered, almost to himself. "The council cannot know, they cannot see." Elena's stomach dropped. The council, the powerful, merciless body of men who governed the underworld with fear. If they discovered her alive, if they realized the bond between them, the rule that had been broken. It could mean war. Her death, or the appearance of it, was the only way to protect not just her, but everything Alessandro had built. She nodded again, understanding, even as her pulse raced. "Do it," she said, her voice shaking, but firm. "I trust you. I know it's the only way." Alessandro's hand didn't waver. He aimed carefully, lowered his body, and fired. The sound ripped through the hallway like a scream. Elena dropped, collapsing to the floor as if the world had stopped moving. Pain shot through her body, not real, but convincing enough for anyone watching. A trick, a deception, a lie that would save everything. Alessandro leaned over her, whispering into her ear, close enough that only she could hear. "Stay still. Do not move. They must believe it. The council must believe it. Your life depends on their ignorance." Elena's breath came in short, shallow gasps, playing the part perfectly. Her mind raced. Every second mattered. Every movement could betray the truth. And yet, beneath the fear, a sense of thrill surged through her. They were playing a dangerous game, a lie that could cost them everything if even the smallest detail went wrong. Outside the hidden corridors, the council received the message. The body, the evidence. Elena Romano, the girl who had broken the sacred rule, was gone. Dead. The words spread like wildfire, whispered in hallways, repeated over encrypted lines, and the reaction was immediate. Shock, relief, and calculation. Wars averted, threats eliminated. The underworld shifted in response to a lie that only 2 people in the world truly knew. Alessandro pulled Elena close, shielding her from the knowledge of anyone else. "They believe it," he whispered. "No one will question it. Not tonight. Not ever. You are safe, but only as long as you stay hidden." Elena's eyes filled with a mixture of fear, relief, and awe. She had survived, not by strength, alone, but by trust, by courage, and by a lie so perfect that even the most cunning minds could not detect it. She realized something profound in that instant. In Alessandro De Luca's world, deception was survival, and tonight they had mastered it. The mansion seemed quieter now, but the silence was deceptive. Danger still lingered. The council still waited, and the world outside had no idea that Elena Romano, the girl who didn't belong, was alive, and more dangerous than ever. The night air over Italy was thick with smoke and fire. The underworld, once ruled by fear and whispers, was now awake, shaking, screaming, burning. Alessandro De Luca had made his choice. He had let the council believe Elena was dead. And now, the king of Italy's underworld was ready to strike. He moved through the darkened streets like a shadow, every step precise, every ally ready, every weapon accounted for. The message was clear. Total war had begun. And Alessandro would be the one to light the fuse. The old kings of the Mafia, men who had ruled through blood, fear, and decades of manipulation, had no idea what was coming. They believed themselves untouchable. They believed their power was absolute. They believed that tradition, loyalty, and their decades of control would shield them. They were wrong. Explosions shattered the silence, tearing through the night like thunder. Cars overturned. Guards scattered. Snipers picked off targets from rooftops. The city that had long slept under the shadow of power was now awake in flames. Italy's underworld burned. And at the center of it all, Alessandro moved like a storm, controlled, precise, unstoppable. Elena watched from a hidden vantage point, her heart pounding in tandem with the chaos below. She had believed she was safe, hidden, invisible. But watching Alessandro strike with such devastating force, she realized that survival required more than hiding. It required decisiveness, ruthlessness. And tonight Alessandro had both in spades. The old kings fell one by one, their empires crumbling in real time. Messages, alliances, and secret deals. Everything Alessandro had studied, tracked and planned for years, came together in a violent, unstoppable wave. He struck first, struck hard, and struck without hesitation. The underworld that had mocked him, ignored him, underestimated him, was now at his mercy. Elena felt a shiver run down her spine. Death and destruction were everywhere. But alongside it, there was something else. A strange, terrifying beauty in the precision, the strategy, the calculated power of a man who ruled with instinct and intellect. Alessandro wasn't just attacking. He was rewriting the rules, redefining fear, redefining loyalty, redefining power. She could see the chaos in the streets below. The bodies, the burning buildings, the shattered illusions of control. And she realized what this meant. Not just for Alessandro, not just for her, but for every person tied to the Italian underworld. The old ways were gone. The new king had arrived, and he would not be challenged again. Alessandro paused on a balcony, overlooking the city, his coat flaring in the firelight. His gaze was sharp, calculating, but there was something deeper. A promise, a warning, a statement that echoed louder than any gunshot. This was his world, and anyone who doubted it would pay the price. Elena felt her pulse quicken. The fire, the chaos, the destruction, all terrifying, all beautiful, all necessary. She realized that survival wasn't just about hiding behind walls or bullets. Survival was about allegiance, trust. And in this war, she had chosen her side. Italy's underworld burned, not with random chaos, but with a deliberate, terrifying order. Alessandro De Luca had struck first, struck hard, and left no room for mistake. And at the heart of the inferno, Elena understood the truth. In his world, mercy was a weakness, and power was everything. The night raged on. Explosions, screams, fire, and chaos. Old kings fell, alliances shattered. And through it all, Alessandro remained unshaken, king of a world forged in blood, fire, and total war. The city still burned, but the storm had passed. For Alessandro De Luca, victory was not measured in destruction alone. It was measured in control, loyalty, and survival. Italy's underworld had been reshaped by his hands. And yet, amidst the chaos and flames, his mind returned to the girl who had risked everything, Elena. She emerged from the shadows, eyes wide with awe, fear, and something else she couldn't yet name. The danger had passed, for now, but the silence that followed the fire was heavier than any gunshot. Alessandro turned to her, his gaze piercing, yet softer than she had ever seen. "You survived," he said simply, the words more profound than any declaration of power. "I trusted you," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "I followed you, even when I didn't." "Understand." Alessandro's jaw tightened, a flicker of emotion passing across his sharp features. He studied her, really studied her, as if seeing her for the first time. The woman who had broken rules, faced death, and offered herself to protect him. She was more than he had anticipated. Strong, fearless, and unyielding. And in her eyes, he saw the reflection of a bond forged in fire. He stepped closer, the roar of the city behind them fading into distant echoes. "Elena, you risked everything for me tonight," he said, low, deliberate. "And now I make a promise. A promise that is sacred. I will protect you, no matter what comes next, no matter the enemy, no matter the cost. This is my word." Elena's breath caught. Sacred. That word carried weight. It carried honor, power, loyalty, a king's vow. And Alessandro De Luca's word was absolute. In a world ruled by betrayal, fear, and death, a promise like this was unbreakable. "I don't want promises," she whispered, stepping closer, her hands brushing against his coat. "I want truth." I want to know that when the world comes for us, you will stand with me. Not just for power, not just for loyalty, but for us." Alessandro studied her again, his sharp gaze softening just slightly. He could see the courage, the trust, and the unspoken challenge in her eyes. And in that moment, he made another choice. Not a tactical decision, not a calculated strike, but a personal one. "I will stand with you," he said, voice steady, carrying a weight heavier than any bullet or blade. "Through fire, through war, through everything, you are no longer just a consequence of the night. You are mine, and I will not let anything harm you." Elena's heart raced, a mixture of relief, awe, and something deeper. Love, yes, but also recognition. Recognition that survival, trust, and sacrifice had brought them to this point. And in Alessandro's eyes, she saw it too. A bond forged in battle, in fire, in danger, and in unbreakable loyalty. The city below was a battlefield still, but up here in the quiet aftermath, they shared a different war, the one of hearts and trust, of courage and choice. And for the first time since the night had begun, Elena felt safe. Not because the danger was gone, but because the man beside her had sworn a sacred promise. Alessandro extended his hand, a gesture of both command and connection. "Stay close," he said, almost a whisper, almost a command, almost a vow. "Because the world will try to take everything from us, but together, we are untouchable." Elena took his hand, her grip firm, resolute, unshaken. And in that moment, amidst the ruins, the fire, and the aftermath of war, they both knew the truth. Some promises are sacred, and some bonds are forged in the fiercest battles of all. Months had passed since that fateful Christmas night, the night of fire, chaos, and total war. Italy's underworld had settled into a tense, uneasy calm. Alessandro De Luca's power was absolute, his enemies crushed or scattered, and the world bowed quietly under his rule. Yet even kings cannot silence their hearts. And for Alessandro, one presence had remained a constant invisible ache: Elena. The mansion was quiet tonight. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, the polished marble floors reflected the soft glow of candles, and the scent of pine from the Christmas tree mingled with the faint aroma of expensive whiskey. It was the kind of night Alessandro usually ruled with calculated control, every detail precise, every step deliberate. But tonight, something was different. A soft knock at the door broke the silence. The guard hesitated, then approached cautiously. Alessandro's eyes narrowed, instincts alert. But there was curiosity beneath the caution. The envelope that followed was simple, unmarked, yet its weight was immediate, tangible. He tore it open. The letter inside was handwritten, familiar, delicate, but unmistakable. The pen strokes carried a confidence, a presence, a life that should have been gone. He read the words, slowly, savoring each one, letting the truth sink in. "Alessandro, if you are reading this, I am alive. I have survived, and I have waited. For the right moment, for the right place, for you. Trust that I will find you. Until then, remember that my loyalty, my trust, and my heart are yours." The world seemed to tilt. His grip on the envelope tightened, knuckles white, as a rush of emotions collided within him. Relief, shock, awe, and something deeper, something he hadn't expected. Joy. Elena was alive. She had survived everything, hidden from the council, from the world, from him. And she had done it with the same courage that had made him protect her in the first place. He dropped the letter onto the table, pacing briefly, heart racing. Months of waiting, months of tension, months of believing she might be gone forever. And now, the impossible had happened. Elena Romano, the girl who had broken every rule, defied every expectation, and risked everything, was alive. The candles flickered as Alessandro's mind raced. He had imagined this moment countless times, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The thought of seeing her, of holding her, again, of hearing her voice after all that pain. It was overwhelming. And yet, he remained the king, the calculated, lethal DeLuca. But even kings have hearts, and his had been missing a piece for months. He lifted the envelope again, letting the words imprint themselves in his mind. Trust that I will find you. The determination in her handwriting mirrored his own. The fire that had defined their shared chaos, the bond forged in sacrifice, war, and trust. It was still alive. And now it called to him, demanded action. Alessandro's lips curled into a rare smile, sharp but genuine. The world could wait. Politics, enemies, the underworld, it could all wait. There was only one thing that mattered now. Finding Elena, reuniting with the woman who had risked everything to save him and had survived. Against impossible odds, he rose, coat brushing the floor, eyes steely, determined. The war was over. The kingdom secured. And now, the true journey began. One letter, one name, one promise. Elena was alive, and Alessandro DeLuca would stop at nothing to bring her back. The snow fell softly over the DeLuca estate, glittering under the pale moonlight like diamonds scattered across velvet. Christmas lights twinkled faintly, casting golden reflections across the polished marble floors. The world outside had been chaotic, ruthless, unforgiving. But tonight, inside the mansion, there was silence, peace, relief, and something Alessandro DeLuca had not felt in years. Hope. He stood near the grand balcony, coat draped over broad shoulders, eyes scanning the horizon. Months of war, months of strategy, months of sacrifice had led him here. Italy's underworld had bowed to him. The council had been outmaneuvered. Elena had survived. Every threat had been neutralized, every rule enforced, except one. A soft sound behind him drew his attention. And there she was, Elena. Alive. Beautiful. Fierce. And alive. More radiant than he had imagined in months. Her eyes locked on his, and for the first time since that chaotic Christmas night, Alessandro's lips curved into a smile. Not a smirk, not a calculation, not the cold grin of a king, but a smile that was human, raw, and unguarded. Elena, he breathed, his voice low, filled with awe and warmth. You're here. You made it. You survived. She stepped closer, heart racing, hands trembling slightly, but her courage, her spirit, remained unbroken. I told you, she whispered, voice soft yet firm. I would find you, and now, I'm here. Always. Alessandro's gaze softened. He stepped toward her, bridging the distance they had been denied for months. Every battle, every sacrifice, every lie, they had all led to this moment. And for the first time in a lifetime of rules, calculations, and power, Alessandro DeLuca allowed himself to feel something he had long denied. Vulnerability. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, reverent, a contrast to the ruthless king the world knew. Rules, he murmured, almost to himself, a faint chuckle escaping his lips. Rules were meant to be obeyed, to control, to dominate, to survive. Elena tilted her head, studying him. And now? She asked, breathless. His eyes darkened with intensity, yet the warmth beneath it glimmered like firelight. He drew closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. This time, I break my own rule. The words hung in the air, heavy with promise, weighty with meaning. Not a warning, not a command, not a threat, but a declaration, a surrender, a choice. Alessandro DeLuca, king of Italy's underworld, master of fear and power, was choosing her. Choosing trust, love, and the fragile, dangerous human connection he had spent years denying himself. Elena's heart swelled. Every sacrifice, every tear, every night of fear and uncertainty had led to this. She stepped closer, allowing herself to finally trust. Not in survival, not in strategy, but in him. And in that single, perfect moment, the chaos of the past months faded, leaving only them. Alessandro's hand brushed hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. For the first time, he did not calculate, did not command, did not dominate. He simply smiled, fully, freely, letting the weight of the past months lift. The world could burn, the underworld could tremble, the council could plot. None of it mattered now, not tonight. This time, he whispered again, voice low, deadly soft. I break my own rule. And with that, the tension, the war, the sacrifice and the fear melted into something else, something stronger, something unshakable. Love, loyalty, trust, and finally, a king who understood that the rules he had lived by for decades could bend when the heart demanded it. The snow fell around them, quiet, pure. The mansion glowed with warmth. And Alessandro, De Luca, Italy's most feared king, finally allowed himself to live in the moment, with the woman who had survived, endured, and conquered alongside him. The night was theirs, the war was over, and some rules were meant to be broken. And as the snow falls on that silent Italian night, a king who ruled by fear finally chose love. A rule that could never be broken was broken for her. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the danger, the sacrifice, the love, the power, then remember, this is only the beginning. More dark romance, more forbidden love, more powerful kings, more brave heroines, more stories that make your heart race and your soul feel. So don't walk away yet. Subscribe now, because the next story might be even more dangerous, even more emotional, and even more unforgettable.